The ACC Big Ten schedule came out yesterday. Of course, Indiana traveling to Syracuse. Kind of a unique matchup there. Mike Woodson going up to take on Jim Boeheim, the old grizzled veteran. And I'm talking about Boeheim, not Mike Woodson. So that's going to be kind of a cool deal.
As someone who's followed them for a long time, Jim, can you think of Indiana Syracuse without thinking about 2013 being like the first thing that pops into your mind?
Drives a lot of people mad. Lot of people mad.
Yeah, that's one of those games that if you're a fan of a team, everybody has those games that you're like that always will get under your skin. And I think 2013 with Victor and Cody, what a great group they had, Christian Watford. It could have happened that year, and
yes,
the bad matchup and the bad performance against that matchup will always stick. So I know that's on the mind of some people, and it's not a great matchup for the Hoosiers now because they're trying, they come in trying to put together a formula to win, to be good, and the first thing you have to do practically is you have to completely chuck the formula. And play against a defense that you almost never see. Now, it could be an advantage in the sense of you get back into the tournament, and then you get stuck against a team like a Syracuse or a Baylor or somebody that can do that, and it's not unfamiliar to you anymore, the way it was in 2013. So it's an advantage there, but it is a disadvantage in that early season where you're trying to build some momentum and some formula. There are a lot of teams that would have been preferable matchups for Indiana than Syracuse. And of course, we don't know. Syracuse has a lot of guys that are still kind of deciding whether they want to be at Syracuse next year. So we don't know how good they'll be. I'm a little surprised with the number of players that IU brought back that they didn't get a more attractive matchup in terms of personnel. But they certainly got the brand in Syracuse. That's one of the ACC's big brands.
Yeah, Buddy Boeheim, right? He's an interesting guy. Jim Boeheim's son, and helped kind of spark that run in the tournament a little bit. That'll be the 6'6" wingman. That'll be an interesting guy to kind of watch and to see if Indiana can match up with that kind of a score.
Yeah, and the one good thing for IU is that in playing against Syracuse defense, they won't go in this time without shooters. They have guys that can make shots. And if that team, if they played that same team a year ago, it would have really been a struggle for the way IU was set up a year ago. Now they have multiple guys. You have to come up with a formula to play against zone. And again, Mike has been in the NBA for 40 years now. It's not that they don't play any zone at the NBA level, but it's different than what Syracuse does. Syracuse is, the one advantage that you have playing them then is they're not great at it yet. I mean, they haven't mastered it. By the time
especially with your point that you bring it, they're bringing in a lot of new faces.
Yes. Yeah. They aren't quite at that level that they get to by the end of February and where they're really good at it. And even though it doesn't always work for them in ACC games or didn't back in the day in Big East games because other teams were ready for it, by the time they got into the tournament, the NCAAs, they were really dangerous because they were great at it, which Michigan State learned in 2018, obviously the Hoosiers in 13 and West Virginia this past year.
Well, here's a little bit of disappointing news for Indiana fans. Keith Smart's last shot with 4 seconds to go in the championship game in '87, in which Indiana beat Syracuse 74-73, is the only win in 6 tries against Syracuse.
See, there you go. You bring up the bad memories.
And the last 4 by double digits.
In some ways it's good because although I don't like, for the Hoosiers' sake, I don't like the idea of building through preseason practice and through maybe your first couple of games and then having to just completely, reverse everything that you've learned because Syracuse forces you to do that. I do like that it sort of throws Mike into that, this is what college is like. This is college coaching. You're going to have to deal with not just, you don't have to deal with the very best players in the world and the genius they bring to the game and having to diffuse that genius. but you do have to deal with, with so many different flavors, so many different ways of playing. And so he's going to have to get that challenge in his third or fourth game, however the IU schedule will break. And I think it'll be good for him in that sense to see that quickly and know that that's the college game. And again, he hasn't been in it for 40 years. So this is a good reintroduction.
And don't forget the atmosphere of the Carrier Dome, too, which will be interesting. I don't know, with fans back. I don't know if they quite draw the same 30,000, but it does get pretty loud in there. I remember covering a Florida Syracuse game there about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's not the easiest place to play.
No, but again, trying to turn this to a bright side conversation, you get that experience of playing in a dome, and you want to play in a dome because the biggest games in the NCAA tournament are in a dome. So you can always say, yeah, this is not totally new to us. We've done it before. If the Hoosiers were able to make it all the way to the Final Four.
I've asked this question before, and I guess I should ask, no offense to either of you, but ask one of the coaches when I get them on, but why is this zone? Because for all of our lives, we've heard, that Boeheim matchup zone is it's terrible. Okay, but he's been playing it for 4,000 years. You would have thought by now that there were people would have been able to figure it out. But it is, especially for teams that don't play, like if you're not playing in the ACC or the Big East where you play them regularly, I understand more so. But the teams that play them regularly, it's still a difficult defense. But not many other teams implement this defense.
Well, look at their league performances over the last 20 years or so. They do not match their tournament performances in a sense. The success they have in the NCAA tournament over the last decade, at least, maybe beyond that, outstrips their conference performance. There have been a lot of years. I mean, like if you get around February, people always make jokes now, Syracuse and the bubble were made for each other, things like that. And I remember I saw last February my first Syracuse and the bubble were made for each other joke. And I thought, oh, come on, not this year. You can't say that this year. And then they make the tournament because that's how it works out. They win just enough to get in. And then once they're in, they're really dangerous. They were dangerous in 2021. They were dangerous in 2018. They made the Sweet 16. They had to beat Michigan State to do it. 2016, they get to the Final Four by beating Gonzaga and Virginia. So all of that goes to them being able to be strategically flexible, to having a strategy that is different than others. And by the time they get to March, they understand how to play that defense. It is a 2-3 matchup in form, but there are wrinkles and rules that Jim has developed over the course of playing this for 30 years that no one else has, except maybe Mike Hopkins, who's now the coach at Washington and was assistant for 20 years and played for him for 4. No one else has that rule book, so to speak, and he tweaks it and he makes changes. The teams that play him regularly get it by the time they've seen it once or twice, and so it's harder for Syracuse to be effective in the ACC now, or it was in the Big East in the latter years. But teams that get into them against non-conference or in the NCAA tournament that don't see it a lot, it really takes a while to get used to. And you just have to either Syracuse has to be a poor team or you have to play at your absolute highest level to be successful.